somewhere in the Oort cloud wasn't exactly a hot spot for excitement. The most notable incident in the past 3 months was when Dr. Lee spilled tea on the quantum processing core. The machine survived. Dr. Lee's dignity did not. Third shift operator Jordan Hale stifled a yawn as streams of data scrolled across his holoscreens. His colleague, Dr. Sanam Malik, had given up on the monotony and was busy constructing a precarious tower out of disposable cups. "If that thing falls, you're cleaning it up," Jordan warned without looking away from his screen. The faint clinking of cups continued. "Bold of you to assume I wasn't planning to leave it for first shift," Sanaa replied mischievously, her tone laced with the weariness of someone running on fumes. "Besides, this is cutting-edge research, structural integrity in action." An alert blared through the room, sharp and piercing as a laser cutter slicing metal. Both operators straightened instantly, professionalism overtaking lethargy. "What the hell?" Jordan muttered, his hands flying over the controls. "Sanaa, are you seeing this? If you mean the signal that looks like a drunk squid trying to solve a Rubik's Cube in 4 dimensions, then yes." She was already running an analysis, her cup tower forgotten. "It's not matching any known patterns," Jordan said, frowning. The signal was unlike anything they had seen, layered and shifting, adapting as it traversed space. "Maybe it's another glitch from that pulsar in Sector 9? "Not a chance," Sanaa shot back, her excitement rising. "Look at the subspace harmonics. Too precise to be natural. And the strength. This thing is transmitting across multiple dimensions." "Great. So it's either aliens or someone's running the most expensive prank in history." Jordan reached for the emergency protocols manual, then hesitated. "We have to report this. Or," Sanaa said cautiously, "we could pretend we didn't see it. Remember what happened to the last team that flagged a false positive?" Before Jordan could answer, the signal surged, new data flooding their screens. As fragments of the message decoded, their expressions shifted from confusion to dread. "Oh no," Jordan whispered as images began to form on his screen. His face paled. "Get command on the line. Now." "But—" "Sanaa, look at the timestamp." He pointed to the data. She squinted, then swore under her breath. "This signal, it's coming from the future." The Emergency Response Center of the United Earth Defense Force buzzed with urgency. Admiral Akari stood at the center, his grizzled face bathed in the glow of a massive holoscreen. Around him, representatives from Earth's major powers watched in stunned silence. The screen displayed the obliterated remains of the Vega 2 colony. Dome habitats were shattered. Atmospheric containment fields sputtered weakly, and bodies drifted in the void, their faces locked in expressions of terror. "Turn it off," someone murmured. No one moved. The footage shifted, revealing the attackers. Towering beings, nearly 3 meters tall, encased in crystalline armor. Multiple compound eyes gleamed coldly on their elongated heads, and mandibles clicked in what seemed like amusement. "Greetings, insignificant creatures," a voice hissed, rendered into English by a translation matrix. "We are the Vyrath. You have been judged." Admiral Akari's fists clenched as the alien continued. "Your species has been observed for many of your planetary cycles. Your technology is functional, your military quaint, but your fatal flaw is your compassion." The broadcast cut to scenes from Earth's history. Rescue missions, humanitarian aid, moments of mercy. Each act was mocked with alien commentary. The strong do not help the weak. The superior do not show mercy. These are universal truths you fail to understand. The screen returned to Vega 2, where colonists had barricaded themselves in a research station. They weren't soldiers, just scientists and their families. The Vyrath's response was methodical, decompressing the facility room by room. "This is your fate," the alien declared, and a warning to all who cling to weakness. "When we arrive, do not expect surrender to be an option." He broadcast sparked chaos, but not the panic the Vyrath expected. Recruitment centers overflowed with volunteers. Factories switched to military production overnight. Even Earth's criminal underworld contributed, smuggling supplies and weapons. 15 million volunteers in the first 6 hours, Secretary General Elena Castor reported. Retired soldiers returning to duty, civilians organizing supply lines. It's unprecedented. General Ibrahim Santos nodded grimly. They think they've exposed our weakness. They've underestimated our resolve. Earth's orbital defenses, dormant for decades, roared to life. Hidden weapons emerged from bunkers. Satellite platforms aligned in precision formations. They've only analyzed our visible capabilities, Admiral Chun of the Pan-Asian Alliance observed. They don't know what we've been hiding. The Vyrath misunderstood humanity. They saw compassion as weakness, never realizing it was born of an intimate knowledge of cruelty. They failed to see that humanity's kindness was a choice, not a limitation, a choice forged by its unmatched capacity for war. The Vyrath had sought to teach humanity a lesson, but in their arrogance, they had awakened something ancient and dangerous, the unity of a species prepared to defend itself at any cost. Demons run when good people go to war. Chapter 2. The Quiet Before the Storm. The hum of the command center grew louder as the reality of the situation set in. Admiral Akari stood before the holographic map, his fingers tracing the projected path of the Vyrath fleet. The stars beyond Earth's orbit blinked like distant lanterns, but the fleet's arrival was imminent. The window for preparation was closing, and the weight of the responsibility bore heavily on him. 3 days, he muttered to himself. 3 days until Earth burns, or it becomes the first true human victory in space. The rest of the room fell silent, the tension thick in the air. Around him, generals and strategists from all over Earth's unified military stood at attention, each processing the same grim facts. General Santos leaned in, eyes narrowed on the projected fleet trajectory. They're coming fast. Our orbital defense grid has been reactivated, but we don't know the full extent of their weaponry. Admiral Akari nodded. We've only seen their tactics through the destruction of Vega 2. We don't know if they have longer-range capabilities, cloaking technology, or anything we haven't accounted for. We need every ship, every resource we have ready. That includes the reserves, right? General Santos asked, her voice steady but urgent. I've already authorized it, Akari replied, turning to her. Every human force must be mobilized. No more hesitation. We fight as one, or we don't fight at all. On Earth's surface, the frenzy had begun. Recruitment centers across the globe were overwhelmed with citizens offering their skills. A call for volunteers had ignited something deep within humanity, an ancient fire long buried beneath the routines of daily life. In Buenos Aires, Maria Delgado, an aerospace engineer, had been the first in line. She was just one of millions, but her name was among the first to be added to the roster for active duty. Her husband, Diego, stood beside her, their hands firmly clasped. He had once been a soldier, but now he was a civilian, a former officer in the South American fleet. The military hadn't called him back yet, but he knew it was a matter of time. We've got this, Maria said, her voice determined. Her eyes, once filled with uncertainty about Earth's place in the universe, now burned with purpose. They want to test us? Let's show them what humanity is made of. Diego squeezed her hand. We fight together, Maria. For our world. For our people. In the vast silence of space, the UEF flagship Courageous hung motionless, its dark hull reflecting the distant starlight. Inside, the crew was at their posts, preparing for the inevitable. Captain Emily Hara, a veteran of humanity's early space missions, stood at the helm, her sharp gaze locked on the swirling star map ahead. Captain, Lieutenant O'Connor called from across the bridge, his voice breaking the quiet. All ships are on course. The Vyrath fleet is holding steady at its current position. We estimate they'll arrive within 72 hours. Understood, Captain Hara replied, her expression steely. She looked at the various screens, watching Earth's military forces come together in a way that had never been seen before. Earth's ships, fighters, cruisers, even civilian vessels now converted for battle, were gathering in the outer orbits. But despite the unity, there was a feeling of unease, as if something still wasn't right. The Vyrath had only shown the tip of their power, but there was no telling what lay beneath. We're ready, O'Connor said, his voice low but resolute. We've prepared as much as we can. Hara's gaze softened for a moment, but only for a moment. Then we wait, and when they come, we hit them hard. Back on Earth, the political leaders had shifted from shock to resolve. In the United Nations Security Council chamber, the usual posturing and bureaucracy had been replaced with something far more urgent: action. Leaders from all corners of the Earth gathered in person, shoulder to shoulder, each one aware that this was no longer a diplomatic crisis. It was the fight for humanity's survival. Prime Minister Fiona Chung of Canada addressed the room, her voice calm but firm. The Vyrath believe they understand us. They've seen our mercy, our compassion. They think it's a weakness. She paused, her gaze sweeping over the room. They couldn't be more wrong. We'll show them the strength of humanity's unity, President Marcus Rivera of the United States said, his voice resonating with a quiet authority. They think compassion is a flaw, but they fail to see that our compassion is what makes us strong. It is what drives us to survive, to defend, and to protect those who cannot protect themselves. The representatives nodded, the gravity of the moment settling in. General Santos, Rivera turned to the Brazilian general. How are the preparations for Earth's defenses? Santos didn't hesitate. Orbital platforms are online. Our fighter squadrons are mobilized. And our civilian defense network has come together in a way I've never seen before. The people are ready. They know what's at stake. Good, Chong said. And when the Vyrath come, we'll show them what happens when you underestimate humanity. In the heart of the Vyrath flagship Oblivion, the high command of the Vyrath sat in solemn silence. The crystalline beings towered over their subordinates, their multifaceted eyes scanning the holographic projections of Earth's fleet. One of the commanders, a towering figure with sharp, angular features, looked at the data feed from the Earth fleet. They are preparing in earnest, he said, his voice like a deep rumble. They think they can resist us? Another Vyrath, equally imposing, nodded. They're too weak. Their mercy blinds them. We will strike swiftly. They will crumble beneath the weight of their own compassion. Prepare the fleet, the lead commander ordered. We move forward as planned. There will be no mercy for the weak. This is the fate of all inferior species. But even as he spoke, there was a flicker of uncertainty within him, though he would never admit it. The humans had surprised him. Their strength was not in their technology, not in their weapons. It was in their ability to unite, to fight for something greater than themselves. The Vyrath had miscalculated, and now they would pay the price. As the Oblivion shifted into its battle formation, the fate of both civilizations rested on the next few days. Chapter 3: The Fire Beneath the Ice. The moon's pale light reflected off the vast ice fields of Antarctica, but the scene was anything but serene. Beneath the frozen tundra, in a subterranean military base carved into the glacier, a team of scientists and engineers worked feverishly. The Aeon Protocol, a highly classified project, was nearing completion. The human race had spent the last few months accelerating every research initiative, every technological advancement, all in preparation for the Vyrath's arrival. Dr. Amelia Holt, one of Earth's foremost quantum engineers, was at the center of it all. Her fingers danced across the holographic keyboard in front of her, her brow furrowed with concentration. She had been working nonstop for days, her eyes bloodshot, her body barely kept upright by adrenaline and sheer determination. The weapon they were building in this hidden base would be their last line of defense, their hope for survival. Dr. Holt, a voice called behind her. She didn't need to turn around to know. It was Lieutenant Commander Rio, her longtime friend and military liaison. His voice had that quiet urgency that told her something was happening. "I'm not finished yet, Rio," she replied without turning. Her eyes were fixed on the swirling data streams, her mind calculating and recalculating quantum resonances. "We're almost there." "You don't have much time," Rio insisted, stepping closer. "We've intercepted more of their communications. The Vyrath are moving faster than we anticipated. Your weapon may be humanity's last hope, but we need to deploy it soon." "I know," Amelia said, her voice tinged with a fatigue she couldn't hide. "The weapon is almost ready. The final adjustments are being made." She paused, and her fingers hovered over the interface. "But I need to be sure. One mistake with this kind of technology, and we're all dead." Rio's gaze softened. He had known Amelia for years, and he knew that once she got into this zone, it was hard to pull her out. "You're doing it right, Holt," he said gently. "We trust you." Her hands stilled on the console for a moment, and she closed her eyes. Trust. It was a word humanity had thrown around a lot in the past few weeks. Trust in the unity of their nations. Trust in their leaders. Trust in their military. And now, trust in their final weapon. "Okay," she whispered. "Let's do this." Aboard the Courageous, the countdown begins. Captain Emily Hara stood on the bridge of the UEF flagship Courageous, staring out at the fleet gathering around Earth. They were just hours away from the Vyrath's arrival. Every ship in the fleet, every soldier, every civilian volunteer was preparing for battle, knowing that it was a matter of survival. Her fingers drummed lightly on the console in front of her, the only sound in the otherwise silent command center. She had led humanity through some of its darkest days, but this was different. This was a war that could end it all. The weight of command had never been so heavy. "Captain," Lieutenant O'Connor spoke up, breaking the stillness. "All ships are in position. The defense grid is fully operational. We've got eyes on the Vyrath fleet. 3 days to contact." "Good," Hara replied, her voice steady. "Any sign of movement from their fleet?" "None. They're holding steady. Their ships are massive. Each one could wipe out a city in a single strike. They haven't shown any indication of slowing down." Hara nodded. The Vyrath's fleet was unlike anything humanity had ever faced before. If they tried to engage the Vyrath with conventional tactics, it would be a massacre. But she had faith in humanity's ingenuity. The Courageous and the fleet under her command were more than just ships. They were symbols of human willpower. She wasn't going to let them down. "We'll hold the line. I'm not going to let them crush us." Just then, a loud chime echoed through the bridge, signaling an incoming transmission. The main screen flickered, and the face of Admiral Akari appeared, his expression grim. "Admiral," Hara greeted him. "What's the word?" "We've detected another signal from the Vyrath fleet," Akari said, his voice tight. "It's not just a standard transmission. This one's meant for Earth. I think they're trying to intimidate us before the fight." Hara's eyes narrowed. "What kind of signal?" Akari hesitated for a moment. "It's a direct broadcast to Earth. The same type of communication they used during the Proxima Centauri attack. It's a threat." "Let's hear it," Hara ordered. The main screen flickered again, and this time, an image of the Vyrath commander appeared, a towering figure encased in crystalline armor. His voice, guttural and cold, filled the room. "To the insignificant ones of Earth," the Vyrath spoke, his words accented by mechanical clicks. "You are weak. You will fall like all the others. Your compassion is your failure. Your mercy is your destruction." Hara clenched her jaw. She could hear the arrogance in the Vyrath's voice, and she knew this was only the beginning. They had underestimated humanity's will to survive. But this message? This was the spark that would ignite their fury. The broadcast continued, showing more footage of Proxima Centauri's destruction. The colonists caught in the endless vacuum of space, the devastation of human lives with cruel indifference. The screen zoomed in on the alien commander, his multiple eyes glaring at the camera. "We will show you the futility of your species. Your resistance is pointless. Prepare for your extinction." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving only the bitter taste of their words hanging in the air. "Admiral," Hara's voice was low, but filled with unwavering determination. "It's time to remind them of one thing. Humans don't kneel." Across the globe, in every city and every country, the message was heard. The Vyrath's arrogance had struck a nerve. What they had hoped would break humanity's spirit instead ignited a fire they could not comprehend. People from every walk of life, from the poorest to the wealthiest, from the most educated to the most hardened, all united under the same cause. Maria Delgado stood outside the Buenos Aires Recruitment Center, now filled with people in every corner of the world. She could feel it in the air, the pulse of humanity's shared will. Diego stood beside her, their eyes locked with an unspoken understanding. "We're ready," Diego said softly. Maria nodded, her face lit by the distant stars above. And so are they. The war was coming, and for the first time, Humanity knew it wasn't just a battle for survival. It was a fight for their place in the universe. Chapter 4. The broadcast that awoke humanity's darkest wrath. The planet trembled with an undercurrent of fury as the broadcast from the Vyrath alien commander continued to echo across Earth's communication channels. It was more than a threat. It was an insult, a calculated attack on the very soul of humanity. And Earth, in all its complexities, had just begun to realize what it was truly capable of. In the dimly lit war room, beneath the surface of Earth's Antarctic stronghold, General Elias Wright stood at the head of the table, his eyes fixed on the holographic projection that hovered above it. The screen flickered with images of the Vyrath, their monstrous forms, their towering figures encased in crystalline armor, their cold, heartless eyes gazing down at Earth's destruction. The last image was seared into his mind. The death of the Proxima Centauri colony, the human colonists floating in the vacuum of space, their faces frozen in horror. "How many ships are we facing?" General Wright asked, his voice low but heavy with authority. The silence in the room was oppressive, everyone waiting for an answer that would determine the fate of humanity. "Currently, we estimate a fleet of over 500 warships," Lieutenant O'Connor replied, her fingers flying over the touchpad. "And based on their previous broadcast, they're not coming to negotiate." The message was clear. They see us as weak, as prey. Wright clenched his fists, his knuckles going white. The Vyrath's arrogance had ignited something within him, something older and darker than any of them could have anticipated. "Humanity has never been prey," he muttered under his breath. "And they will learn that. But we need a strategy, something they won't see coming." The large, polished table hummed, and the holographic projection shifted. A map of Earth and its orbit appeared, showing the positions of Earth's remaining military assets. Satellites, orbital defense platforms, military bases. The remnants of a world that had spent decades preparing for this very moment, even if they hadn't fully understood it. "General," came the voice of Dr. Holt from across the secure comm channel. "The weapon is ready. It's untested, but we're confident it can breach their fleet's shielding." "Good," Wright replied, his tone sharp. "But it won't be enough to rely on one weapon. We need more, everything we've got. And we need to strike first." Dr. Holt's voice crackled through the speakers. "I agree. The Aeon Protocol is a quantum-based weapon, but it's a one-shot deal unless we can somehow reverse engineer it. If they send a fleet like they did to Proxima Centauri, we can't afford to be playing defense." "I've got an idea," O'Connor spoke up, looking up from her console. "We already know they've underestimated our compassion. They see it as a weakness. But what if we use that against them? What if we made them think we're vulnerable? Let them think we're fractured and uncoordinated?" Wright raised an eyebrow. "And how do you propose we do that?" O'Connor leaned forward. "By broadcasting our version of a surrender. A feigned capitulation to their demands. We'll make it look like we're crumbling under the pressure of their message. Then, when they least expect it, strike from every angle." For a moment, the room was silent as everyone processed the idea. It was unorthodox, and it would require precision. But in war, sometimes the most unexpected moves could win the fight. "I like it," Wright said, his lips curling into a grim smile. "Let's make them regret ever underestimating us." Across the globe, humanity was responding in ways no one had anticipated. The broadcast had shaken the foundations of the planet. But rather than succumbing to fear, it had awakened something far darker within Earth's people. The world was united in a way it had never been before. And it wasn't just governments, military forces, or civilians preparing for war. It was the raw fury of a species that had been pushed too far. In New York City, on the steps of the United Nations headquarters, a large crowd had gathered in the wake of the Vyrath broadcast. There were no political rallies, no public speeches. Instead, there was only a low, murmuring hum of angry voices. People from all walks of life, scientists, engineers, teachers, doctors, and factory workers, stood together, their faces lit with a fire that hadn't been seen in generations. "We are not weak," shouted a man at the front of the crowd, his fists raised high. "They think we're prey? Let's show them what happens when you push humanity too far." The crowd roared in agreement. Meanwhile, In the heart of the European Union, government officials were meeting in emergency sessions. The usual tensions between countries had dissolved in the face of the alien threat. Leaders, once divided by political rivalries, now shared the same focus: survival. "We have to move quickly," said Chancellor Sophia Mueller, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "The Vyrath won't wait for us to catch up. Our best bet is a unified military strike, simultaneously from every front. Space, air, and ground forces must coordinate like never before." Her words were met with nods from her counterparts, and for the first time in history, national interests were set aside in favor of a singular, united purpose. 3 days after the Vyrath's first broadcast, the alien fleet entered Earth's orbit. From space, the ships looked like a dark swarm, moving in perfect unison, their angular forms casting long shadows over the planet's surface. The Vyrath's first wave of ships entered communication range and began transmitting their message once again, a final warning. To the humans of Earth, the Vyrath commander's voice thundered, "We have arrived. Surrender now, or your extinction will be swift and certain. There is no hope for you. There is no mercy. You are weak." But as the signal reverberated across Earth's atmosphere, humanity was ready. Beneath the surface of every military command center, in every hidden base, in every human heart, the same thought echoed. "We are not weak. We are not prey." General Wright's fingers hovered over the button. The time for diplomacy was over. The time for humanity's wrath had arrived. He leaned forward and gave the order. "Launch the first wave. Let's show them the fire they've awoken." The Vyrath had underestimated humanity's wrath. Now they would learn that the darkest depths of human anger were not born from cruelty, but from a boundless desire to survive. The war was no longer just a defense of Earth. It was a war for the very soul of humanity. Chapter 5: The Wrath of Earth. The Vyrath fleet loomed in Earth's orbit like a great shadow, their ships arranged in tight formations, weapons primed and ready. They had underestimated humanity's resilience, misjudging the strength of a species forged in conflict and compassion. Now, as their warships continued their slow, deliberate approach, Earth's forces were ready. Every military asset, every hidden weapon, every human heart and mind was united in a singular purpose: to push back the invaders and prove that Earth was not so easily broken. The last moments before the battle began were suffused with an eerie quiet. It was the calm before the storm. In the underground bunkers of Earth's command center, General Elias Wright stood with his arms crossed, watching the holographic display of the Vyrath ships. He felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him, the responsibility of directing humanity's fight for survival. "Status report," he said, his voice low, the tension in the air palpable. "All systems are green, General," replied Lieutenant O'Connor, her fingers moving quickly across her console. "The orbital defense platforms are online, and the Aeon protocol is locked and ready for activation. The first wave of fighters is en route." Wright nodded, his mind already processing the incoming data. There was no room for hesitation. They had no choice but to strike hard and fast. If humanity was to survive this, they needed to hit first, hit hardest, and show no mercy. "Initiate the broadcast," he ordered. The room fell silent as the emergency message was sent. The signal pulsed out into the vacuum of space, a brief flicker before it reached the Vyrath fleet. It was the same message humanity had crafted in their darkest hour. The message of surrender. The message that would make the Vyrath think humanity was on the brink of capitulation. "We surrender," the message echoed through the Vyrath fleet's comm channels. "Please spare us." Wright turned to O'Connor. "Now." The moment the message was sent, Earth's forces unleashed hell. A dozen of the most powerful orbital platforms fired their weapons in perfect synchrony, massive energy beams streaking toward the Vyrath ships. At the same time, Earth's fleet, composed of warships, fighter jets, and civilian ships converted for combat, ripped through space toward their enemies. The Vyrath had been prepared for an easy victory, for a weak species willing to bow to their power. What they didn't expect was the fury of a species that had been pushed too far. The first few Vyrath ships in the front of the formation were struck by the intense beam fire from the orbital defense platforms. The hulls buckled under the force, and explosions rippled outward, turning the invaders' ships into floating wreckage. What the hell? The Vyrath commander's voice crackled through his fleet's comms, disbelief in his tone. Return fire! Full power to the shields. But it was too late. Humanity's response had been swift, and the Vyrath fleet was already reeling. More of Earth's ships streaked through the void, releasing volleys of missiles that tore through the Vyrath's protective barriers. In response, the alien ships began firing back, sending waves of destructive energy toward Earth's defenders. The battle in space was nothing short of brutal. The Vyrath, with their advanced weaponry, proved a formidable enemy, but Earth's military strength, bolstered by the desperate unity of every nation on the planet, was unmatched. Humanity fought not for power, not for land, but for survival, for the right to live and protect the future. On Earth's surface, the response was just as fierce. Military units around the world mobilized, taking to the streets and setting up defenses. The general populace, already enraged by the broadcast, rushed to join the fight in any way they could, whether it was manning civilian defense posts, volunteering for evacuation missions, or supporting the injured. But amid the chaos, General Wright felt a pang of doubt, an instinctive fear that grew with every passing minute. He had seen humanity's strength, but had they truly underestimated the Vyrath's resolve? The invaders had shown no mercy at Proxima Centauri. What if their fleet was only the beginning? Hours into the battle, Earth's forces were gaining the upper hand. The Vyrath fleet, though superior in technology, was struggling to keep up with the sheer will of humanity. But then, just as victory seemed within reach, the Vyrath unleashed their trump card. A massive distortion rippled through space, followed by a pulse of energy that hit Earth's defenses like a hammer. The Aeon Protocol's activation was interrupted, its energy source destabilized. The orbital defense platforms staggered, their shields flickering. Several of Earth's ships were torn apart in an instant. Damage report. Wright barked, his heart racing as the Vyrath began to charge their next wave of fire. O'Connor's voice was strained. We're losing ground, General. Their energy weapons, they're disrupting our shields. The Vyrath were adapting faster than they had anticipated. Earth had thrown everything they had at them, but the Vyrath's technology was unlike anything humanity had ever faced. They were relentless, cold, calculating. Wright's eyes burned with the realization that the Vyrath had come prepared for this fight, for humanity's anger, and they were not going to let it be enough. We need to hit them where it hurts, Wright said, his voice a hard rasp. I want their command ship. On the ground, Earth's forces were reaching their limit. The Vyrath had begun to land troops, and their relentless onslaught had begun to break through. But just as it seemed like all hope might be lost, a new message came through the secure channels. It wasn't from the Vyrath. It wasn't from Earth's forces. It was from an unexpected source. The Vyrath commander's voice interrupted the chaos, his tone colder than ever. You think you can defeat us? You, who can barely unite to defend your own kind. We are the harbingers of the end. Surrender, or your species will be erased. General Wright's hand shook as he clenched the comms button. He turned to O'Connor. We don't surrender. Not now. Not ever. With a steely resolve, he gave the order for humanity's final attack. Earth's last remaining fighters launched into the heart of the Vyrath fleet. The Aeon Protocol was still unstable, but they had one final shot. As the fighters converged on the Vyrath command ship, the last wave of missiles launched from Earth's surviving ships. The blast was deafening, a bright flash of light that consumed the Vyrath flagship, the heart of their command structure, and sent the enemy fleet spiraling into chaos. The war was far from over, but the Vyrath had been delivered a mortal blow. Their commander's final words came in a hollow transmission. We underestimated you. Humanity had won this battle, but the true cost of victory remained to be seen.